Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's session. Let me just welcome you as even before Dr. Nelly Mugo comes on and takes you through the session. We'll be starting in just the next 2 minutes. I want to welcome you to this session on COVID-19 vaccine in Kenya, where we are going to be discussing matters COVID-19 vaccine that has just been rolled out. And we do have a very robust panel with us who will be taking us through this session. You're very welcome to join. You're very welcome to engage with us. Do share your question and answers in the Q&A section. Those asking, if you're starting, you're now starting. Just in the next 2 minutes, I'll hand over to Dr. Nelly, who will introduce the panelists, and we'll start off the session, even as you are ready to be joined by the rest. Thank you very much for joining us. For this, helping moderate in the background, I'm Dr. Karingo from Kenyatta National Hospital. Karibuni sana. Maybe Dr. Nelly, you can take on here.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time in the evening to join these presentations. I see we are over 600 participants. It's really impressive. This Thursday evening, we actually have the honor of having a really excellent team of experts to talk to us about the COVID-19 vaccine in Kenya. And as we all know in our social media pages, there's a lot of controversy around the vaccine. There's a lot of issues around issues of vaccine hesitancy, which is not new. And we have the right people talking to us. We have each member of this panel is a member of the National COVID-19 Response Team. And I will introduce them each as they make their presentations. I think they're all really well known to you. And I'll start with introducing the first speaker, Dr. Willis Akwale, who is not new to the medical field in Kenya. He was head of disease prevention and control at the Ministry of Health in Kenya. And he was at that time responsible for managing a wide range of donor-funded disease control programs. Then he was country director for an international training and education center, ITEC, and a chief of party for USAID-funded impact projects in malaria. And he currently is a chair of the African Leaders Malaria Alliance and is playing a major role in the COVID response team. So kindly join me in welcoming Dr. Willis Akwale. Karibu.
Dr. Mugo, Dr. Akwale will be on in just 2 or 3 minutes.
Do you want me to keep talking about vaccine hesitancy?
He's I think he had mistaken the time for 7:30, but he says he's joining in a minute or 2.
Excellent. Do you want me to introduce everybody else then as we wait?
I think so. And then, so that after that, then we can just move on.
Okay. I can't see what the camera is showing of me. I hate talking to a blank camera, but it's fine. I didn't want you to just look at the screen. So the voice you've just listened to, who you hear a lot more from today, is Dr. Richard Aya, a long-term colleague who's taught for many years on health policy, health systems at the School of Public Health, University of Nairobi. He's a medical doctor with a master's in health planning and policy and financing, and with a PhD in public health. So we're truly honored to have your expertise on this panel. And he's also a member of the COVID-19 response team. The next person on our panel is probably also very well known to you, our long-term colleague, Professor Omu Anzala, a professor of medical microbiology with immunology specialty, was formerly CAVI director. And for those of you who've been following the COVID response, also know that he and Dr. Maritim were honored by the president earlier on in the year with the spear of, somebody will tell me. It's a great honor. And I left Dr. Maribeth Maritim for last but not least. She's a lecturer at the Department of Clinical Medicine and Therapeutics at the University of Nairobi. And if you ever look at Dr. Maritim's CV, you'll find that it's laced with her being the best final year student in the Faculty of Medicine. in surgery, in obs-gynae, internal medicine, and I've listened to her teach, and she's a brilliant teacher, as you all are. And she's also been at the forefront of the battle and engagement of our COVID-19 response. We couldn't have hoped for a better panel of speakers to talk to us and give us an update on an AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine update. Perhaps, Dr. Aya, do you want to say anything more? I can talk for a long time. I'm cautioning myself. And this is not my session.
Yeah, I think as we wait for Dr. Kwale to come on, because I think he's the chair of the task force, so he will have a lot of details of sort of, I think, some of the details that people want to listen to. Maybe I could just start off by talking about what the role that I'm playing. So I was invited to be on the task force to help with the strategy and specifically to help with the training. So planning the training that is being rolled out. So what's happening now, because I can see that there are going to be quite a few questions about the rollout, whether our rollout is slow or not. Maybe I can give an overview of exactly what it is that we're doing. So the vaccine arrived at the end of the first week of Feb, and we started rolling out the training. And what we did was the first level of training for TOTs, and we trained over 600 health workers from each of the counties. So that bit of it was just to start off, and the way we were doing that is that, if you recall, the rollout of the vaccine is supposed to be in 3 phases, and phase 1 is around health workers and the military, the uniformed forces, and teachers. So, and when you look at it from the health system side, we started off with level 4 facilities and above. So these 600 coming from the counties, including the various county directors of health, vaccinators, the epilogisticians were the ones that we trained first. And then we're now about to start the next phase of training, where we're going to train 3,000 health workers, again, from all the counties, but going now down to the sub-county level. Now, on the one side, there's training of the health workers. And of course, almost all the health workers they already know about immunization. And one of the criteria in terms of doing the training and establishing the vaccination sites is that each facility has to have a vaccination site in addition to the regular immunization program. Because last year, when COVID started, one of the difficulties was that the immunization levels dropped. So it's not a question of taking the person who regularly does immunization. It has to be in addition to, and having the facility available to take on this additional program. So we're matching the phase in terms of the scale up, and a lot of people will think that the way in which it's being rolled out is linear. It's not linear. It's actually escalating, and I think Dr. Kwale will give you the numbers in terms of how from the first few days it has increased for now. So it's escalating, and we expect within 2 or 3 weeks we'll have done now the next group of 3,000 health workers, and the numbers will now be hitting the targets that we expect. I'll pause there for now. I can add a bit more detail as we go along, because I can see Dr. Kwale is in, and he can add in, and then we can add after that. Thank you, Dr.
Okay, Dr. Kwale, it's my pleasure to welcome you. We have 780 participants on this call, which is excellent. And I did a wonderful presentation and the accolades of your many achievements. So we're keenly looking forward to your presentation. And as we do that, there's also a poll that the program, Dr. Kenyani's team is gonna put out for us to respond to. Kindly go to the chat section. It's not yet out. As soon as it's out, please take your votes. Yeah, you're viewing the questions, excellent. Kindly go there and vote. Welcome, Dr. Kwale.
Okay, thank you, and apologies. For some reason, I thought it is 7:30 and I was taking a nap. It has been a busy season for me the last almost 6 weeks. But yes, being busy is part of the business. So thank you for inviting me to share with you what we've been able to do. And I thought the best, I've made presentations and many of you may have seen them in various forums. And I thought today is just to highlight some of the key areas that either we had to address, we are currently addressing, or will need to be addressed since we started deploying the COVID-19 vaccine, AstraZeneca in particular. And just to state that actually the decision to adopt the vaccine was informed by the Kenya National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization Technical Advisory Group. And I and my team were brought on board towards the end of last year and tasked to look at areas of regulation and safety monitoring in particular, costing, financing, and resourcing, planning and coordination, procurement and logistics, trainings and capacity building, advocacy, communication and community mobilization, data management, monitoring and surveillance as another work stream. I would want to go through each one of them to just highlight. In the area of regulation and safety monitoring, the task force adopted recommendations from KNH-UoN that we would adopt, that the country would need to procure a vaccine that has stringent regulatory authorization and has local registration. Just to inform you, by the time we made the decision to procure AstraZeneca, only AstraZeneca had the local registration. Pfizer initially were telling us they do not see the need for local registration, which would have made it very difficult for it to be imported. And Moderna, which was the only other one under COVAX mechanism, did not just have doses that they could be able to supply during the period of especially February coming towards March. So since that time, a number of firms have submitted registration of vaccines. Pfizer has actually, I think, now put its dossier. Sinovac, Sputnik V. All these have actually submitted. And just about a week ago, Pharmacy Board told us they had approved Sputnik V. So as a local registration, but as you know, it's not yet approved by either WHO or any other stringent regulatory authority. Now, the other thing that was crucial is the setting up or linkage to the work with the Kenya National's Vaccine Safety Advisory Group. And the plan was to ensure that we have everything in place to monitor any side events. And I'm happy that we were able to link with the Pharmacy and Poisons Board pharmacovigilance system. And here we have what we are calling spontaneous reporting. Following vaccination, there's observation for any immediate side events. And those who receive the vaccination are told to report any side event, whether it is severe or not. If they feel it's not what they expected, they call back the healthcare worker who then fills a form. There's an online form that is submitted to Pharmacy Board. But currently we have a digital platform where, again, this information is fed into. The Pharmacy Board has also put in what they are now calling active surveillance or active monitoring of the side events. And here they do random selection of facilities and just try to reach some of the people who are vaccinated to find out if they did not report any of their side effects. And now, the other point I need them to note is on the area of costing. So during the planning stage, especially January and February, the financing pot that was available to us was the COVAX mechanism, in which countries could access these vaccines at subsidized costs. And at that time, the range of delivery of the vaccines was $6 to $8. For Kenya, we used the costing rate of $7 delivered. Now, this one is important because at one point, the media was indicating that we were buying the vaccines at $7. No, this is just a unit cost. And actually, the vaccines like the AstraZeneca is cheaper, and especially if it comes from India. But we are not only stuck to AstraZeneca. Vaccines can be bought. Pfizer could come from the US. AstraZeneca could also come from Europe as well. And the Moderna and others that will be joining. So that was just a costing unit. It's not what, and this is really paid by through UNICEF. So using that cost, we estimated that it would take 34 billion shillings over a 30 months period of the deployment plan, Gavi contributing 20 billion, and the government 14 billion. Now, at the same time, the Africa CDC told us they have a mechanism through the so-called Afri-Exim Bank, and that they would supply vaccines at the same cost as COVAX. Now, the challenge there is just the financing mechanism through Africa Exim, and the National Treasury has been in discussions with them. Some of the aspects don't fully align with our financial management system, like one where you'd be expected to pay a certain proportion to the bank before you start negotiating the loan terms. Now, something I also need to mention about our deployment plan, and people have been saying that, why are you going all the way up to 2023? Why can't you do it faster? Now, the consideration in this deployment plan was that phase one, which is January to June, is really, during this time, there's very limited number of doses. In fact, if you look at the COVAX projections, we were to get 4.1 million doses, but now we are going to get 3.5. And the reason being that many other countries are joining the COVAX, and we are all fighting for the limited doses that are available. We, however, expect that come July, there will be more vaccines available and more selections, and that's when we'll be ramping up to do almost 10 million Kenyans. Now, what we need to know is that no vaccine is approved for use in pregnant women and also in children under 18. So when you see that we are targeting, for example, 15.8 million Kenyans in the 30 months, this is actually the adult population. However, we do expect that some of the vaccines may get approval for pediatric use in the course of the 18-month period. And that is why we used them for that planning. Therefore, if you look at 15.8, and if we are able to do almost 12 or 15.8 million adults within the coming financial year up to June, I think we'll be on a good path. And if then the children vaccines are approved, and the children are almost half of the population of the under 18s, then we could progressively start moving towards the 30 and 40% population coverage. Now, in terms of planning and coordination, I think one of the things we need to point out is our devolved health system. Our focus was a lot more on how we engage the counties. And as you may appreciate, during this time of COVID, a lot of the consultations was on virtual platforms. I can assure you a meeting of 47 counties with different skills on use of virtual platforms, people talking their language, people calling each other, it can be a challenge. But we kept trying our best. We talked to the CECs, we talked to the county directors, and at one time, both of them. We engaged the Committee on Health, but interestingly, they started saying we haven't engaged them, but at the same time, it's the same counties that were giving us names of the people to be trained. However, last week we did a high-level consultation with all the governors. Well, they bought into the plan. Yes, but we learned that yes, they would always want to have a meeting directly with themselves, and therefore the cabinet secretary organized that. In terms of procurement and logistics, this phase has been smooth because all the procurement was supported by UNICEF. If you realize, the vaccines arrived, and actually within 3 to 4 days, we distributed half of them. About 492,000 were distributed because our estimation of frontline workers was 450,000. And we distributed 492,000. We had reserves. We have special groups like the security, the military, who do their vaccination directly. We've given them their doses. So during the first week, what we did to ensure vaccination started at the earliest and we test the systems, we decided that we start with one public health facility, the highest level, whether it's a level 6, level 5, or 4 for each county. And actually, there was very good progress because vaccines arrived on 3rd, and by 7th, which was a Saturday, all counties had were ready to collect the vaccines from their depots, regional depots. On the Monday of 8th, which we count as our week 1, many counties started collecting their vaccines, and a number of them collected on Tuesday, and really Wednesday, 10th, which is just about a week ago, 23 counties had started vaccinating. And Friday of last week, 43 counties. Now, between Wednesday and Friday, that's the first report we gave of 9,000 vaccinations. And if you really calculate, we started at 3,000. So this Monday, the 15th, was our week 2. And we saw that on Monday, it increased. On this last Monday, it increased to around 4,000 vaccinations. Yesterday, it was 5,000 vaccinations. Today, by around midday, it was already near 4,000, so we're expecting about 8,000. So there's been quite an increase. Part of this is because we've now enlisted the private sector, the mission sector. Trainings have started, and they're collecting their vaccines. Our aim is to reach about 15 to 20,000 vaccinations a day during this first phase, and gradually increase that, especially during the second phase. I think in terms of training, I found Dr. Aya talking about that. It's a cascade approach, it's blended. We are really also encouraging self-learning. We've produced videos, and we are hoping to host a lot of materials online, given the challenges that we do have. But we appreciate that this vaccine has some key techniques that require face-to-face. So there'll be some limited face-to-face trainings. Before the rollout, we had trained 35 national master trainers, 235 county TOTs, and 110 health workers. You heard Richard say that we are now going to, especially from next week, gradually train this to another 2,300 healthcare workers. Advocacy, communication, and community mobilization is another very key stream area that we worked on. And on this one, our objectives were to inform, encourage, and create demand, ensure stakeholder sensitization, and also demonstrate government commitment. We have developed a communication plan, and we have key messages that really we need to share with many stakeholders. We've been meeting quite a number of stakeholders, but the demand keeps increasing. And well, I must admit, this is an area we are going to ramp up. This vaccine actually, by the time it was delivered, it was very short notice because there was a lot of what you want to call bureaucratic processes that had to be met before the shipment occurred. And we were just able to beat the deadline by 48 hours. Otherwise, would have been pushed to the May supply. So it was just within 48 hours, and we were told the vaccine will be there on Tuesday night. So a lot of things like communications have lagged behind, and there's now a plan to really ramp them up. In terms of data management, monitoring, and evaluation, we worked with the Ministry of ICT and have developed a digital platform which we have called Chanjo Kenya. It is able to monitor stocks, vaccine stocks, traceability, scheduling, and reminders, the reporting of adverse effects, certificate issuance, and one can do aggregate statistics and analytics. Now, this digital platform, I want to really give kudos to the team at the Ministry of ICT. It took them 4 weeks to develop it. So far, it's working well. The challenge we have is some of the gadgets, the pads that were given, because we were given the ones that were used by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics in the 2019 census. Some are not working, but we are working to replace them. I'm also happy to report that there's a module that has now been developed and added to it, which will allow self-registration. I believe, if not next week, the following week, healthcare workers, frontline health work, you will not need to go and queue in a facility. You will just schedule your appointment, whether you'll go in the morning or afternoon on a particular day, and which facility you want to be vaccinated, and you will now be going at your convenience. This will become very handy, especially as we go also to phase 2. So the other thing is very key will be to monitor the impact of the vaccination. And here we are working with the academic and research institution to really monitor how this deployment is going to impact the overall burden on the pandemic burden. And I know we've not done a lot of proposals, but we'll be reaching out to research teams to see how we can work around this, including socio-behavioral studies on this vaccine uptake. So let me see. So I must say that we've started, yes, people may think it is slow, but as like Richard said, we are going to have very gradual scaling. I see it taking pace. I think the announcement of the third wave and definitely people realizing there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of pressure on us to review some of the priority targets in phase 1. Very strong cases have been put on persons aged 60 with underlying health conditions. And yesterday we actually said these ones, given that that's where most of the deaths occur, will now become part of phase 1. Immediately we get the next stocks of vaccines early April, which we believe will be about 1.5 million and be able to cater for a second dose and then be able to support the vulnerable populations, the elderly. I think the other pressure we've got also and consideration the task force has considered is the whole issue of clergy. If you look at our deployment plan, our plan was to really stick to instructors of religious training colleges, but the Interfaith Council petitioned the top leadership in the country in terms of the fact that they are the ones always in touch with the congregants where the people are sick. They are the ones going to the hospitals. They are the ones praying with families. And therefore, yesterday you heard the cabinet secretary really say they should also be part of phase 1. So having said that, from where I sit, it is smooth. We may be having challenges. We are addressing them as much as possible. There's been a lot of support from government departments on this. And I strongly think in another 2 weeks, especially people who want to see numbers, yes, the numbers will start coming. Thank you very much. I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I think you've responded to several questions as they are being asked. And some of them have been answered. I'm trying to go through them. We have a number, maybe we can go through the number of people who have raised their hands. And the person who has the unmute button, maybe you can allow Evelyn Moturi. So we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hands. Evelyn, if you're on. Maybe she raised her hand and is no longer there. Igla. Maybe we can allow Wambui. Oh, sorry, Dr. Jauko, Professor Jauko, please.
Professor is muted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for a very nice presentation. Probably can help me understand the reason why the data we are collecting does not categorize people into knowing like doctors, nurses, clinic officers, or lab people, because that would have been a very useful data to collect if somebody asked you how many doctors have been vaccinated and so on and so forth. Because my experience when I was being vaccinated, nobody was being asked even who you are. Anybody could just walk and get the vaccine. And now when you're saying that we are expanding to include the clergy and the reporters are also paying for it, I see a situation where the vaccines will not be enough. Why isn't it that we are not categorizing people so that we know whether we are meeting the correct target group or not? Thank you.
Okay. Do I answer now or I take a few more?
I think maybe in the interest of time, because we're half past and we have a few more speakers, can we allow Dr. Wasuna?
I don't think I have any questions to ask.
Okay. It's because the hand was up. Then we have Patrick Adera.
Hello.
We're going through the hands which are up.
Good evening. My question to Dr. is just on the same line that has been raised by Professor on the specific cadres that are taking the vaccines, so that at the end of the day, we know how many healthcare workers have received the vaccine and which line. Then number two, I would really want Dr. probably to clarify on the numbers of those vaccinated by today. I think I missed a point. Thank you.
Okay. I think that Dr. will be able to answer collectively. Catherine?
Thank you so much. It was a nice presentation. I would like to ask on the issue of certificate. I heard the doctor talking about the certificate. Are they going to be issued for all individuals who are going to be vaccinated?
Okay, Evelyn, are you back to ask? Okay, Samson? Mariba? We cannot hear you if you're talking. Okay. Dr. Do you want to answer to those people, and then we'll take the only questions we'll take are from Omolo, Mwinde, and Matthews and Jofinas. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. These questions seem to be all around the same thing. Now, the system is able to categorize. Let me state that. I know we've not shared that immediately, and but if you really need, we can share. We've been a little bit careful on how much of this data we want to throw out there, and who, which audience. So of course, the media is very keen on a lot more numbers, and others, as you, like many of us here, may want to go a little bit deeper. When the system was being developed, we also had this challenge that a lot of cadres, healthcare workers, some may not be in any of the key specialties. And the question was, do we have a drop-down menu that has almost 28 cadres, or would we just stick with some of the key cadres, the medical, the nursing, the clinical officer, the lab? But also we started having a challenge, how far down do you go, nutritionists? And I know we got the idea that we could pick a few of the key cadres and then just call the others allied health workers, something like that. So you may find it will give you for key cadres, but it will lump very many others together. And the issue of what data we have today, by yesterday it was actually 19,900. Today at midday, I don't have, they usually consolidate it at between 7 and 8. It was, but by midday it was very close already to 4. So today we may be doing 7 or 8,000. So on top of the 19th, but really that one is still, I guess, but we are seeing a very steady increase. So the final data for today, we are hoping to consolidate also for tomorrow so that we release on Saturday. And then from next week, now that the systems may all be sorted out, we are hoping to actually have a real-time release of the data. I know there's enhancing of a few servers within the government system. Because of patient because of private data, citizen data, such a huge amount, this system is actually currently being supported from Ministry of ICT and Office of the President. So, but we are in touch with them as the data is analyzed, and it's going to be handed over to us.
All right, I can see we are approximately a quarter to the hour. Maybe I'll beg the other participants to type in your questions so that we can allow our other panelists to get a chance to talk to us. So Dr. Willis Akwale, thank you very, very much. I don't know if you have some other remarks.
Yeah, thank you. It is, I'm glad that I've been able to share where we are. What I need to say is that, yes, the task force recognizes this is a very challenging task, but I must really appreciate that they have put all their efforts to get us where we are. You know, the challenges of working in government bureaucracy, and also the challenges of just working in a devolved health system. But we are very hopeful, especially if the counties take up the actual vaccination process and align to the guidance that we've been given. I believe it's going to be successful. The biggest challenge, of course, we'll face is just the lack of adequate doses of the vaccine. It's very difficult in times of scarcity, human nature to scramble. So this, I can tell you from where I sit, is something I would wish it wasn't happening. I wish we just had enough doses to be able to meet everybody's need. So I look forward to your support. We'll be reaching to the team, specific group of people, and I hope we can walk this path together. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you do. I want to remind attendees, kindly go to the poll and respond. Answers are coming in. I think we've had about 869 respondents, which is good, but some of you have not responded yet. So let's hear from you, and at the end, we'll hear a summary. So it gives me great pleasure to ask Dr. Ayar to give us a few commentaries, then we'll go to Professor Nzala and Dr. Maritim.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really won't add too much to what Dr. Kwale has said. I think he's covered a lot of the stuff. The area that I'm looking at is mainly the training, and I'd explained a bit of that earlier on. Maybe the comments I'll make that I think are coming through a lot of the questions. One of them is around indemnity. And under and maybe Dr. Kwale can add on, but under the Gavi mechanism, one of the requirements for receiving the vaccine was that there had to be an indemnity in place. So Gavi has that in place, and government added their bit. So for this vaccine that has come in, there is indemnity available. And if anybody comes in with another vaccine, and this is one of the questions that's been asked by private sector, they have to put in an indemnity. So there's some negotiations going on right now to try and see whether if somebody wanted to import, because there isn't a market authorization, what would the indemnity look like? But for this vaccine, it is in place. So that was one of the questions that I think I'm seeing repeatedly being asked. In terms of the way in which, there's the other question is about, public and private. Really what we're looking at in terms of the centers are those that are part of the EPI program. So they're already doing vaccination. The question is, do they have the added capacity to do another vaccination program so that they do not affect the regular vaccination program that goes on? So just to echo what Dr. Kwale said, from the initial training, the guys have been really fantastic. The people who are doing the vaccination, who've come for the training, they've been really good, really dedicated. Just to stress one point, I'm totally not an expert in this, but if you talk to Dr. Tabo of the vaccine program, he will tell you that most issues arise because of poor execution of the vaccine process rather than the vaccine itself. So whereas people are perhaps anticipating or eager for a quick rollout, one of the things that has really been emphasized is that we have to get the training right, particularly the techniques, that the technique is done correctly from start to finish, and that the handling of the vaccine as well, because it's a little different from the other vaccines that people have been used to. So the emphasis is on those differences so that we don't make mistakes as we go along. And this is related also to the issue of vaccine hesitancy and so on. So we're really being cautious to be sure that our training is as good as it can be. And remember that we're constrained in terms of the number of people that we can gather together. So we're talking about an e-learning platform as well. But that bit of the practical, there's an emphasis that it just has to be done practically speaking. It can't be that you watch a video and then you go out and you vaccinate. Even though from when we did the first training, we did video recordings of everything and we have those and we're editing those. But that practical bit just has to be done practically. So that's a constraint I hope people will appreciate, that caution. And this is also tied into what PPB has to do in terms of the reporting of any side adverse effects and so on. And remember also that we have a brand new system, the Chanjo system, the IT system, which is Kenyan done. And that also requires some training and upscaling. Thank you.
All right. And I think in the process of your presentation, you also responded to a number of questions. So, because I cannot tell what they are from the raised hands, so now those hands seem to have gone down.
So Nelly, can I just add, I did answer one question
Yes.
about the certificate. Yes, the plan, we are designing a certificate so that after you've got your 2 doses, then there'll be a message sent to your email, and you can always access it through a one-time password OTP, even if you are traveling. But we also know not everybody in Kenya is able to have email. So there'll be an option of SMS, and where necessary, maybe printing out of the certificate to give the people. So that is a work in progress.
Okay, thank you. And I think you're responding to many of the challenges people have come across. You know, I feel really bad not allowing people to answer questions, and Dr. Kenodio told me we will be on until 8:30. So I can perhaps, is Susan Jerry there? Would you like to ask? It'll be a few minutes. Maybe your hand just hadn't come down. Okay. Pauline Cheriot. Okay. Elijah Ongeri. It looks like many people put their hands up and went off.
Hello, good evening, Dr. Nelly.
Yes.
My name is Elijah Ongeri. I'm the head of nursing for Metropolitan Hospital. Just wanted to know from the already vaccinated groups whether we've received any actual side effects or adverse events compared to what we are hearing from Europe. So far, we are only seeing the unions recording that. From our center, we haven't recorded any side effect, or we haven't noticed any. So I wanted to know whether we have that data. Number 2, we know this is a vaccine that was approved on emergency, at emergency level. So I wanted to know, in terms of data protection, how much of our data is going to be transported to the country of origin in terms of how they want to learn about our vaccine and how it's going to work on us. So basically that's so that we understand how our data is going to be used. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know, will either Professor Omwanzala or Dr. Maritim be talking about AEs?
Okay, then that's fine.
Maybe they can respond to that. I don't want to pick on people who've just raised their hands.
But can I quickly just say, 43 AEs had been reported by yesterday, and we were sensitizing people to report more. Pharmacy Board has actually given a portal where people should report. So we should be seeing it. We're actually encouraging people to report. And majority of them were the low-grade fever, headache of varying levels. Now, data protection, the reason actually we decided to use Ministry of ICT was so that this data does not go out. This is, in fact, something I had to, there are so many partners who really wanted to be part of this. We said no, the government took charge and it is fully funding this system. Thank you.
Hooray, hooray, hooray. Proud to be Kenyan.
Dr. Nelly, just final question. In Metropolitan, we had already started seeing an increase in the number of patients coming to the hospital with clotting disorders. And actually the numbers doubled from last year, October, to this year. And our projections were that we will see more patients with clotting disorders, even without the AstraZeneca vaccine. So maybe it's something that the team that is leading this that can have a look at the various hospitals and see whether this is the case. And maybe it's something that is completely out of AstraZeneca. Thank you.
I think if I was to speak from what I've seen, the European medicine agencies, the World Health Organization, have continuously told us that the people who experience clots, it wasn't associated with the vaccine. And you know, and Dr. Akwale, you can comment on that. Huh?
Yes, sorry, yes. No association has been established so far. And in fact, in one data set, they found the non-vaccinated group had a higher chance of clotting than the vaccinated group. So, and as you can see, the countries that are suspending is really out of caution and it's part of their licensing procedures, because during this phase, then you need to report everything. Remember, at this phase, the regulatory bodies will be working also very close with the manufacturers to document any of these events and investigate them. Of course, what the media is not very keen on writing is once the resumption of use, then we don't see that as headline. But yeah.
And I think this has dogged the vaccine world for a long time. I think when they were doing the HPV vaccine in India, a girl fainted, and it led to the complete closure of that program for a long time. So maybe one of our speakers along the way will talk to us about social media and its impacts on vaccine confidence, which we need to be wary of. So I had Ali Arale. I'd seen your hand earlier. If you're there. Okay. And then I had seen June Odoyo. Silence. I think Mwinde had spoken. There was somebody, Mwinde, who had their hand up. All right. It says Gabriel Mwinde. Okay. I was just speaking on the names of those whose hands had been there earlier on. The other hands have come down. Yeah, your questions were probably responded to. Excellent. Okay, we're doing excellent. Still remind people who haven't gone to the poll, please add your responses to the poll. Now, it gives me great pleasure to invite Professor Omwanzala, long-term colleague, expert on all matters vaccine, as he has led the work at KAVI. So welcome.
Allow me to hand over to Prof. Anzala. He'll be presenting from my computer. So I've just loaded a few slides that he wants to talk about, and then I hand over to him.
Or shall I introduce you then, my dear friend? Did I jump you?
Hello, everybody.
Okay.
I hope you can hear me. Hello.
Prof, we can hear you, please.
Yes, I'd like to. I'd like just to, since we have a lot of audience with us here, just to let the audience know that a lot of the stuff we are talking about vaccines, a lot of this work has also been done in this country. I'm not sure how many of us are aware that we have 2 Ebola licensed vaccines. We have one from Merck, which is a recombinant vesicular stomatitis virus, Zebu, approved by FDA in 2019. And then we have the one of Janssen & Janssen Ebola vaccine, approved by the European Union in 2020. And the interesting thing is that the Janssen & Janssen has 2 recombinants, the AD26 and the MVA, the modified Vaccinia Ankara. Now, the reason why I talk about this is that this work, phase 1 and phase 2 for the Janssen & Janssen vaccine was actually done here in Kenya. We did a phase 1 at KAVI. We also did a phase 2 at KAVI. People might not be able to know this, but we have worked with this vaccine to the extent now that it is actually licensed. So what I want to share is actually just a bit of work we did on safety and immune response. This is how we administered this vaccine. We had 3 arms. We gave an MVA and then an AD26. The other one we gave an MVA and then an AD26. One was at day 26, the other one was at day 56. And then we reversed, where we started with the AD26, followed by the MVA. And you can see day 28, and day 56. And the reason why we were doing this is to actually just to try and understand which is a better prime and which is a better boost. And we were looking at neutralizing antibodies. We were looking at interferon gamma for T cells. We were also looking at CD4 and CT8 responses. So when you hear us talk about vaccines and the work that is being done out, I like also for colleagues to understand that this work is actually also being done in this country. So we randomized 72. This was a phase 1, healthy volunteers who have participated. 71 of them completed the prime boost. All the subjects were healthy Kenyans, adults. We randomized them into 5 to 1 on active to placebo. And this was a randomized double-blind controlled. You can actually measure their median age as the body, the median body mass index. And we are really interested in that because we have seen an influence on the immune responses. And then just to show you the various things people are now talking about, the AstraZeneca vaccine is actually a recombinant vaccine. The only Janssen who are using the R21 and the MVA, this was actually the vaccine for the smallpox, and they are using these two, but the AstraZeneca is using same energy, but it is using a chimp adeno, meaning that it's using a chimp virus. For these two, what we saw is actually a bit of pain, a bit of prurite, and a bit of warmth, both for those who received a single dose MVA and those who actually received a placebo. I mean, the R26, but you can among placebos who report reported what? Clearly showing you that really what we are also seeing can also be seen in placebo individuals. This is again the frequency of you at people, head, myalgia, and vomiting. More or less the same kind of frequency of symptoms that individuals will actually present with as we go through this vaccination. So what I'm trying to say is that the phase 1 we did here for X and MVA are more or less the same kind of things that you are actually, you see these things, these are actually side effects that we realize that we can actually be able to live with. So the most were just headache and fatigue. Only one person who had concurrent malaria reported 3 can chills, but realized they had a concurrent problem. And this is what exactly the Dr. Gwale has been talking about, that when there is an adverse event, we must investigate. Chances are there will be another coincidental problem that was going on, not necessarily related to vaccine. And this is exactly what we saw in our phase 1 and phase 2 for Ebola. And again, looking at antibody responses, and I'm glad to hear that some of this work, although we didn't do this here, but as we roll out this vaccine, that we shall be allowed to nest in so that we can also understand our immune responses. Just to show you the antibodies, how they go up, and following these antibodies for over a year, because we want to be able to understand, do they last for that period of time? Can they be able to protect? And just looking at MVA alone, looking at MVA and R26, and then reversing to look at the other way and to find out which is the best, prime boost. Then binding antibody levels, this is one aspect of it. The other aspect is actually virus neutralization, because there are two aspects we normally would see when you administer a vaccine. You'll see binding antibodies and you see neutralizing antibodies. So my prayer is that as we roll out this vaccine, Richard Aya and the others in the task force, let us also nest this study so that we can be able to understand what is the level of binding antibodies and what do they do, and what is the level of neutralizing antibodies and what do they do, and how long do they last? Because there's been a question being asked all the time, how long will these antibodies last? So just to show you that we did this kind of work, but for a different vaccine, AD26 and MVA, which has actually gone on to be licensed. And these are just looking at the CD4 CD4 cells, which are critical, because if you don't induce a CD4 cell, you cannot really induce an immune response. And finally, this is actually the publication that came out of the work we did, safety and immune response of a 2-dose heterologous vaccine regime, AD26 ZEBO and MVA philo. And the interesting thing is that the MVA part of the vaccine did not just have Ebola antigens, but it also had the Marburg antigens. This was a 12-month data from a phase 1 randomized clinical trial in Nairobi, Kenya. And the conclusion you can actually see down here is that the 2-dose heterologous vaccine with AD26 ZEBO and MVA BNA philo was well tolerated and highly immunogenic among Ebola vaccine, the glycoprotein. So what I'm trying to show, ladies and gentlemen, is that the platform that we are using now, the AstraZeneca, 2 vaccines have actually been approved. These vaccines are now currently being used in Rwanda and DRC Congo. So I just wanted to show you that this work goes on here. Maybe people might not be aware. We are now currently also looking at major, well-advanced HIV vaccines that we will be able to talk about later. So let me stop there, Nelly, but I just wanted to show you that work has gone on in this country that has led to vaccines that have actually been approved. And this is work we were doing with Jensen and Jensen. Over and back to you. Thank you.
Professor Nzala, I just want to say that I feel really proud of the work of Kenyan scientists. And very often when you read social media comments, you might imagine that we don't have scientists in this country. Yet you and your team has been doing extremely high level work. There are very few centers that can do phase 1 trials. So one, I want to congratulate you on that work and thank you for the presentation. And I hope our audience recognize that the side effects that are rotating in social media are well evaluated. And number 2, this question then, how quickly could the vaccine roll out, is answered by the fact that we have years and years of work and that these adjuvants were well tested and well tested on Kenyans. Maybe we can combine the remarks after Dr. Mary Beth has presented. Is that okay, Prof?
Yeah, that will be okay. Let her present and then we can combine the questions together. Thank you.
Okay, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Maritin. Karibu.
Thank you so much. Allow me to share my slides, just 1 minute.
As you're presenting, for people who came later, I hope you recognize the work that both Dr. Maritim and Professor Nzala have done right from the beginning of this pandemic last year, and their contribution, which was recognized by the President's office. So Dr. Maritim.
I'm having a technical difficulty, like to transition from the previous presentation, but just give me a few minutes. I'm missing my cursor.
Oh, that's fine. We can then ask for additional questions.
Yeah, please ask for questions.
Somebody will say, oh, I think you said your comment about the clotting.
Yeah.
Dr. Agnes has summarized the questions from the chat box.
Excellent. Dr. Agnes, do you want to comment on those?
Yes,
Agnes,
even as we wait for Dr. Maritim to come on board, I'll just kind of summarize some of the common questions that have been asked and that have actually been tackled in the presentation. So a lot of questions about the logistics, the numbers, and we've actually gotten that open presentation from Dr. Kwale, who said that so far there's a rollout plan in place, and so far we are getting to about the 8,000 mark of people being vaccinated, and we started with the healthcare workers. Those who are asking about where to get vaccinated from, where to get vaccinated, you can have that. You can check that at the website, at the MOH website, and there's a list of centers from where you can get your vaccinations from. So once you get there, you'll get the vaccinations. There are both the private centers and the public centers where you can get your vaccination. About the costing of the vaccine, we have been told from the presentations that this is absolutely free. It's been catered for. There's an indemnity cover by the government of Kenya under the GBV program, and so you can be able to go there and get vaccinated. Those who are wondering about the rollout to the elderly people, we've been told that there's a steady plan for that, and that once you finish this first phase, there's a rollout plan to include and a lot of pressure to include the other population and to consider the elderly, and so that is being done. Yeah, those who are asking about where to report the symptoms or where to have that data, we've been informed about the pharmacy, the Poisons and Pharmacy Board, which is doing the monitoring. Once you get your first vaccine, you also get an SMS notification. You get an SMS notification, and there you also get more information. For the certificates, they are being given out after the second dose. There's also an app. Someone was asking about an app. There's an app already in place. It's called the Chanjo app, which is also enabling with which also helps with the monitoring. So please do get that, the Chanjo app, and you'll be able to put in to see what is there and even put in the questions and even monitor the symptoms from there. So those are some of the common questions that have been highlighted even during the presentation. I don't know if I can see Dr. Maritim is coming on board, then we can.
Yeah, and after Dr. Maritim's presentation, we also have Dr. Hayemba from KPPB and Dr. Mecca from DVI, and they'll make additional comments.
So I have a very short presentation because I know a lot of questions have come in about safety and adverse events following immunization. For this presentation, I am not focusing so much on efficacy, but this is just an infographic to show us what are the components of a vaccine. And we know that the current vaccine that we are deploying, Covishield, has some of these components. So vaccines would have water in which the vaccine is suspended, or some liquid for which it's suspended in. It would have an active ingredient. It would have adjuvants. It may have some residual traces of the components that are required in the manufacturing process. And for example, the formaldehyde is found in some of the vaccines, but maybe not in these specific vaccines. And then vaccines mainly also have preservatives and stabilizers. So the importance of knowing all these components is that when somebody has all these components have a role and function, and sometimes they may contribute to some of the adverse events following immunization. And these are studied in the clinical trials, and they sort of, because some of them have been used for a long time, some of the adverse events may be predictable because of whatever components may be in specific vaccines. So when we talk of adverse events following immunization, basically it's any untoward medical occurrence that follows immunization, which does not necessarily have a causal relationship with the usage of the vaccine. And this may be an unfavorable sign or an unintended sign, abnormal lab finding, symptom or disease. So you're looking at a symptom, for example, pain or fever. A sign, someone might develop jaundice, for example. A lab finding, there may be thrombocytopenia or a specific disease. Someone may even develop meningitis. So it's a very broad definition. And the key word here is that it may not necessarily have a causal relationship, and this has to be determined. The causal relationship has to be determined. And for example, what we are hearing in the European Union is that there were clots following vaccination. So the key thing is to determine that causal relationship so that you can actually attribute it to the vaccine, because sometimes some things are coincidental, that these people, even in the absence of vaccination, may have gone on to develop clots. We've heard from the comment from Metropolitan Hospital about the increase in number of clots. And that is an important thing to note, that this increase in clots has even been noted before the deployment of COVID vaccines within Kenya. So that's an important thing to consider or to note, so that even as we deploy the vaccines, we are reporting, and there's a committee that sits to adjudicate causality. And I sit in that committee as well. So when we look at adverse events following immunization, there are 5 main types. Type 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Type 3 is the commonest, and Dr. Aya laid a lot of emphasis in this when he's talking about immunization error-related reaction, and this is where training of healthcare workers really has an important role in preventing, because this is a preventable adverse event following immunization. What is type 1? Type 1 is vaccine product-related reaction, and this is an adverse event that is caused or precipitated by a vaccine due to one or more of the inherent properties of the vaccine product. And that is why in the previous slide, I showed you what are the components within the product that may contribute to the type 1 adverse events following immunization. Type 2 are classified as vaccine quality defect related reaction. And these are adverse events that are caused or precipitated by a vaccine that is due to one or more quality defects of the vaccine product, including its administration device as provided by the manufacturer. And for example, this is what even the European Union Regulatory Authority were trying to find out whether it's a batch related event, because when it's a batch, then you can look at whether there was a problem in the quality or the product manufacturing process. So you go back and look at the production system and try to explain whether that is related. But again, looking at what is coming out is that not all the vaccines that are related to that batch have been associated with clots. And what we currently know is that there have only been 37 clots that have been reported out of, in Germany, for example, 1.7 million doses of that vaccine has been used. And therefore, it may not really be related to a specific batch. Type 3, what are the immunization error-related reactions? These are caused by inappropriate vaccine handling, prescribing, or administration. So if you inject in the wrong place, it would be an error. If you handle the vaccine wrongly, for example, if you keep it outside of the cold chain for long, then it will be an error. It will lead to an error. So again, these are really can be prevented by training the healthcare workers. Immunization anxiety-related reaction. These are adverse events that arise from anxiety about the immunization. So for example, if people are queuing together and then one starts to faint because they are scared of how long the needle looks like, then that would be classified as an adverse event following immunization. And some of this was seen a lot with the rollout of HPV vaccination, where you'd have adolescents all sitting together in a queue, and then they start fainting even before they receive the vaccine. So that's immunization anxiety-related reaction. And then the last group, which is called coincidental event, these are adverse events that are caused by something other than the vaccine product, immunization error, or immunization anxiety. So this is coincidental, and sort of like you have to exclude all these other types before you can say the event is coincidental. So for example, if someone is vaccinated, and then when they're leaving the vaccination center, they are maybe hit by a motorbike, then you may consider that coincidental. And you really need to do a lot of evaluation and see whether it has a causal relationship with the vaccine. And many a times you may find some events are just coincidental. So as we await the determination of the regulatory authorities in Europe and WHO, then this is an important thing to think about and really help us to see how we can minimize, for example, the type 3 errors. So talking about the reactions that have already been received within the surveillance system within the PPV, we have what are called minor reactions and then severe reactions. So the minor reactions would occur within a few hours of injection. They resolve after a short period of time and pose little danger. And this may include pain and swelling or redness at the site, and also may include systemic symptoms like fever, malaise, muscle pain, headache, and loss of appetite. So if you have any of these following your vaccination, these are expected and would be considered as some of the minor reactions. And some of these have been studied over a long period of time. And this is really expected because we are introducing an antigen or a part of an antigen to stimulate an immune reaction. And for all of us who've gone through medical school, we know the cardinal symptoms of inflammation, which are really elicited by vaccination. Then we have the severe reactions, and these are usually do not result in long-term problems. Some can be disabling, are rarely life-threatening, and may include seizures and allergic reactions. So this is in a broader sense, even looking at the pediatric vaccinations. And this is just a schema to illustrate some of the expected reactions. So you'll have local tissue injury because of the injection, and then the stimulation of the immune response within the local area, and you have local symptoms, so swelling, pain, redness, and this is mediated by cytokines. Some of these cytokines spill into the blood system and therefore induce a systemic response mediated by other inflammatory markers, and we have manifestation of elevation of CRP and other prostaglandins, and this explains some of the systemic symptoms that you may have suffered, so headache, fever, and fatigue, and this is really expected. On this other side, we have a schema that's explaining some of this and looking at the response. Some of it is fast, mediated through the nervous system, and then we have a slow humoral response, but all this contribute to the local as well as the systemic inflammatory response that we see following immunization. We have two elliptical images here, the big one showing the severe reactions, but I want us to focus on what we'd consider as serious reactions. So in IFE surveillance, IAFI surveillance, we classify serious reactions as any untoward medical occurrence that results in death, that requires inpatient hospitalization, results in persistent or significant disability, is life-threatening, and in pregnant women, causation of teratogenicity, again, is considered a serious event. So in terms of in conduct of clinical trials, these are actually reported to the regulatory authorities, and there's a proper management of when they occur, what exactly happens once some of this occurs. So this is just showing the frequency of adverse reactions. Some are very common, would occur in more than 10%. Some would be considered as common, occurring in 1% to less than 10% of the vaccinated population. Then there are some which occur in less than 1%, and then going all the way to the very rare. So looking at this proportion of less than 0.01, when we calculate the risk of the clots that have been described in Europe, it's 0.0000, like 6 something. So it's a very rare occurrence, and therefore, when it's very rare, what we have to remember when you're doing clinical trials, sometimes the study subjects are few, but when you use the vaccines at a large scale, like has been currently deployed under emergency use authorization, the numbers of people who are vaccinated become very significant, and something that was very rare then may become more manifest. And that's why there's a very robust system to monitor any adverse event following immunization to be able to pick up what are called signals. So looking at this is a very busy slide, and maybe I should just focus on the Chadox vaccine, which we are deploying currently in Kenya. So basically, it's made from it comprises of a non-replicating chimpanzee adenovirus expressing spike protein, and Prof. Anzala had on one of his slides the image of that. And basically, in that vaccine, the preservative is polysorbate 80, and the other preservatives for the other vaccines include polyethylene glycol, which have been associated with anaphylaxis in some of the vaccine recipients, but it's considered very rare in the cases that have already been vaccinated. So this is the slide we were talking about, but I'll not spend too much about it. But basically, we have the non-replicating virus, which has the genetic code encoding the spike protein that is now administered and induces the immune response that results in formation of antibodies against the spike protein that are able to recognize any virus and be able to neutralize before infection. So looking at the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I borrowed this slide from the training for the vaccine deployment from Dr. Ayer's training material. And these are the expected reactions and the proportions which were noted in the clinical trials. So very common is headache, nausea, fatigue, myalgia, malaise, pyrexia, chills, pain at injected site, tenderness, warm, and erythema. And these are really expected. And like myself, I received the vaccine on the first day, and I just had pain at the injection site and some heaviness on that arm. Some people have reported having vomiting, and this is considered common, so occurring in less than 10 to 100 vaccinees, and then uncommon again, more than 1 in 1,000. So decreased appetite, lymphadenopathy, dizziness, abdominal pain, excessive sweating, pruritus, and rash. So lymphadenopathy, starting at the region or lymph nodes close to the axilla, the left axilla specifically. This is a very rare reaction, the anaphylaxis, and it's potentially fatal. It has been described more with the mRNA vaccines, not yet described with the adenovirus vectored vaccines. And basically, what we do in the vaccination centers, and part of the requirement for the training, is that there should be provision to be able to address and avert any of this reaction. So there should be provision of things to manage anaphylaxis when it occurs. And that's why for all of us who are vaccinated, we spent 15 minutes after the vaccination being observed within the areas where we were vaccinated. And this would manifest with difficulty in breathing, swelling of the face, fast heartbeat. You can have a bad rash all over the body, dizziness and weakness. So this is immediate hypersensitivity and manifests within a few minutes after the vaccination. So this busy slide is really just to tell us the sample size of the different clinical trials and sort of give us an idea about the safety things that are noted within the clinical trials. So looking at phase 3 clinical trials, you recruit up to 10,000, but I know in the COVID vaccines, these were in the regions of 20,000 to 40,000 vaccinees, and you observe for safety as well as efficacy to help you to calculate the efficacy of the vaccine. So far, a lot of the safety data came from the clinical trials. And even as we deploy the vaccines under emergency use authorization, the pharmacovigilance system is a robust way to be able to even continue tracking the safety of the vaccines at a larger scale. So this is just a summary of the participants of the various clinical trials. And we can see the AstraZeneca, by phase 3, they had recruited 50,000 participants. And therefore, we had a lot of robust data at that point in time. So moving on, there is this newer classification that has been generated, and it's called adverse events of special interest. So what we were talking about previously were adverse events following immunization. So this is adverse events of special interest. They are abbreviated as IAC. So this is a pre-specified medically significant event that has the potential to be causally associated with a vaccine product and needs to be carefully monitored and confirmed by further special studies. So when a sponsor or a company develops a vaccine, they come up with a pre-specified list of what they are going to look out for. And this list has some basis at how they come up with it. And these are some of, sorry, I'll show you in a future slide what really, how they come up with the criteria they use to come up with this list. And basically looking at the events that have been noted in Europe, I believe they were part of the adverse events of special interest during the clinical trials, because you look out for them because either related to the platform that you're using or the vaccine that you're deploying, to pre-specify and look out for them and conduct special studies and really try to find the causal relationship with the vaccine. So this is just a table contrasting the two. So for IFV, it's an untoward medical occurrence that follows immunization that does not necessarily have a causal relationship, as we have seen. For adverse events of special interest, it's a pre-specified event that has the potential to be causally associated with the vaccine product that needs to be carefully monitored and confirmed by further special tests. So you go out of the way to try and study these events. And this is how the list is really generated. So you maybe have, the first criteria is that maybe it may have a proven association with immunization. That is true for most, if not all, the vaccines. So a lot of the things would fall here because a lot of vaccines have been deployed in the past. So you'll find the ISC list would comprise, and I'll show you some of the events. The second criteria may be a proven association with a known vaccine platform or adjuvant that is being used in any COVID-19 vaccine. So we know of the platform, the mRNA. We now also know of the platform of the viruses, the non-replicating, the viral vector vaccines. The third criteria may be a theoretical concern based on immunopathogenesis of COVID-19 disease. And this is where the clotting really comes into play. And a lot of complications and or organ involvements that have been described with COVID-19 as a disease. And this is where even the discussion from the doctor from Metropolitan about the clots come into play. Because if we already know that there are already clots associated with COVID-19, then this may be included as part of the adverse events of special interest because that disease is associated. The disease we are trying to prevent or protect against has that risk or concern with some of those conditions. The fourth criteria may be theoretical concern related to viral replication during the COVID-19 infection. And then the fifth criteria may be theoretical concern because it has been demonstrated in an animal model with one or more vaccine candidates. So these are how really the different criteria for which an adverse event of special interest may be generated. So this is just a list that was developed and published by the group under the CEPI that is looking at deployment and development of COVID-19 vaccines. So the ICs that are included because they are seen with COVID-19 disease are so many, and these are some of the clinical entities that we have seen that are related with COVID-19 as a disease. So again, there are a lot of literature, and some of these are still work in progress, not fully characterized. Still, the definitions are being developed, and some recently developed. And then IACs included because they have a proven or theoretical association with immunization in general. We know some vaccines cause thrombocytopenia, some cause convulsions, some cause acute demyelinating encephalomyelitis, some cause GBS. So they are considered adverse events of special interest for COVID vaccines as well. Then IAC is included because they have a proven or theoretical association with specific vaccine platforms. Again, there's a list there. So this list is a very long list. And therefore, even as people are vaccinated, the manufacturers or the sponsors of the vaccine really would look out for some of this, despite the fact that maybe some of them were not seen within the clinical trials. So again, very busy slide, but just highlighting the 5 different ways in which a list for adverse events of special interest would be generated, and the various thresholds for some of the consensus groups for acute kidney injury and acute liver injury. So this is just a quick summary, and I know Christabel from PPB is here, about adverse events following immunization. And really why I'm sharing this on this platform is to encourage all of us to contribute to the data. So by reporting, we are able to contribute to the data, but also it provides a safety net so that we all know that we are monitoring this vaccine, and we are all concerned about we share, all of us share the safety concerns. And therefore, by reporting, we have a feedback loop that's able to address the concerns that are raised. So we have IFE detection, then notification, reporting, and we'll be told about the reporting system. There's a process of investigation. Investigation focuses more on the serious adverse events following immunization, and these are investigated so that at the end of the investigation, you can be able to proceed on to the other parts. There's analysis of that data. Then there's causality assessment, and causality assessment is a process to try and classify the adverse event into the 5 categories that I've talked about. And then there's feedback as well as response. So this is a cycle that keeps on happening in real time, because if somebody develops an adverse event, that has to be reported. At the same time, that person has to be responded to. So for the mild and moderate adverse events following immunization, in the training, the healthcare worker even tells you what to do following that. And then for the more serious one, again, requiring hospitalization, then somebody would have to seek healthcare and be hospitalized. So again, this is just the infographic related to all that, about how the reports come in, what happens, we have the passive surveillance, then there's line listing, some cases are investigated, and then following that, there's this committee that sits to adjudicate on causality and attribute and classify. And in this case, for example, the European committee, I know PRAC was already collecting some data and try to sit and see if there's any causal relationship between the events that were reported and what has happened. So that's really the essence. For you to be able to do this, you have to do a lot of investigations to see whether even what were the risk factors in these people, what else could have contributed to the adverse events and the clots that they developed. So it's a very elaborate process and very fairly open and transparent. So this is just a summary. I think it's on my last slide, looking at the causality assessment process. And this is published. This literature is available online. So basically, when you're trying to assess whether the vaccine is responsible, there are several questions that you have to answer. Is there evidence for any other causes? So your investigation should have been able to look for what else. Did these people have factor V laden, for example, which we know is high among a certain population, and therefore may have put up at increased risk of thrombophilia or clotting. So you have to investigate and do a lot of investigations to look for potentially other causes. The second question is there a non-causal association with the vaccine or vaccination? So looking in the published literature, looking at biological plausibility, and doing a specific test to demonstrate the causal role of the vaccine. Could the vaccine have a quality defect? Could there have been an immunization error? Could the event have been immunization triggered stress response? So these ones help you to answer and classify in the various groups, so that in the end, if you answer some of these, then you are able to categorize, so that you might just find that something is coincidental until a certain time when now you are able to show the biological plausibility. If you answer yes to two, sorry, if you answer yes, my slides jump. If you answer yes to two, you did the event occur? Sorry, did the event occur within a plausible time window after vaccine administration? So if you answer, then you proceed to the next. Is there a strong evidence against a causal association? And then look at other qualifying factors for classification, such as a previous history of similar event, the background rate of the event, pre-existing, present, and past health conditions, potential risk factors, other medications, and exposures to triggering factors. So when you're doing investigations, these are really the things we want to find out. For example, if you vaccinate somebody when they have a fever, and then they go on to develop now exaggeration of some of the events. So the question is, could that fever have been early COVID? So you're vaccinating someone already who has COVID, and therefore the immune response may be exaggerated. So that's really the importance of taking a very thorough history at the point when you're reviewing a patient who's had an adverse event of following immunization, to be able to document some of this. What we call the background rate is really the baseline rate of those events within the community. So for example, in Kenya, we should even be looking at what is our background rate, for example, for clotting before, even as we deploy the vaccine, so that if 2 people develop the clots and we know our background rate maybe is 10 people, then we may find that in the people who are vaccinated, the rate may have been lower than even what is already documented. So the background rate, for example, for clot is a bit difficult to make a relationship, because we know that COVID as a disease has come with a lot of clotting as complication. But then we need to see, did the clots increase significantly during COVID? But what was the background rate even before the COVID-19 as a disease? Then pre-existing, present, and past health conditions. We know that when you're vaccinated, some occult health conditions may become manifest. For example, if you have herpes simplex, for example, herpes labialis, and then you get the vaccine, and then you get fever brought in by the vaccination, then you can develop herpes labialis, a flare of your herpes labialis. So again, knowing the past, present, and health condition of the individual is really important. So this causality assessment is a very elaborate process, and really, even as we report the adverse events following immunization, then we have a committee that's able to adjudicate on causality, and we follow a very clear process to finally reach and classify the adverse events following immunization. This is my last slide, so I'll stop sharing and wait for Q&A. Sorry, I may have gone over time. I apologize.
No reason for apology. I think in your presentation, Dr. Maritim, You've answered many, many questions that arose. I have 3 things I'm going to do before everybody leaves, and I really want to thank all our participants by staying with us, and I think it reflects the quality of the work that's being done. Dr. Maritim, could you go to polling and look at what those responses are? And maybe announce them and make a comment.
Now I'm at the polling, and we had 3 questions for the poll. And the first question was, have you received a COVID-19 vaccine? And 30% of our audience today, and we are currently at close to 9, we're actually 927. So 30% of 927, which is low, have received the COVID-19 vaccine. The second question was, do you plan to receive the COVID-19 vaccine? And the majority have planned to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Actually, 83% plan to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. So there's a gap. The people have not received, but they plan to receive. So we need to find out what is maybe the bottleneck to actually presenting themselves and receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. And the third question was, as a recipient or potential recipient, do you have concerns regarding COVID-19 vaccine? And actually, there was no respondent in the no. So 71% of the respondents have concerns regarding the COVID-19 vaccines. And I don't know where these concerns are noted, but the reason why we had this poll was really to try and find out, because this audience is mainly targeting healthcare workers, to reach out to healthcare workers and meet them at their point of concern to address those concerns and really improve the uptake of the vaccine. So it would be good to note some of the concerns. We had a hindsight that one of the concerns may be the safety issue. And we hope that there's somewhere where people have used free text to highlight the concerns that they have, so that we can use this forum through other webinars to address the concerns and therefore reduce the hesitancy that healthcare workers may have. Over to you, Nelly.
And call upon all of you healthcare workers for your own good to get vaccinated. So thank you very, very much, Dr. Maritim. And I know we are closing in to going to the full hour. I don't see raised hands. Sorry, that's my own. So let me lower that. And because of time, and before I thank all of you, I'm going to ask Dr. Kaemba from KPPB for her comments, and then Dr. Lucy Mecca. Christabel?
Thank you, Dr. Nelly. So just to echo what Dr. Maritim has said, it's really important that we document and report all suspected adverse events following immunization. I know sometimes there's usually a tendency for people to only report what has been shared as AEC or what has been documented. But the reason why it's important that we document all adverse events, so that in reporting this, we are able to pick out any rare adverse events that could occur that had not been documented before. And just as Dr. Maritim has said, in case there are any serious adverse events, then again, this gives us an opportunity to be able to quickly put up a team and follow up on the same. And just to reassure people that so far, based on the reports that are, based on the people who've been vaccinated so far, we've actually received some reports of these adverse events following immunization. And just to echo that, majority of them is what Dr. Maritim has just shared: fever, maybe pain at the site of injection. And so far, most of them have been categorized as non-serious, so mild, and most of them are resolving. So as we keep on being vigilant and reporting, it will help us dispel the fears around vaccination. And the link to the reporting has also been shared in the chat, but if you go to the PPB website, you'll be able to find the AEFI form. And even as we continue rolling out, because people are asking, what about those who are not healthcare workers? it also allows for the members of the public to report. So that's, yeah, just to emphasize that it's important that we report. Thank you, and I hand over back to you, Dr. Nelly.
Thank you very much. And I hope along the way, everybody's getting reassurance about how stringent the Kenyan vaccine program is, and how much expertise is available all around to make sure that the process is safe and professional. So Dr. Mecca, do you have a comment from the vaccine program?
Thank you very much, Dr. Nelly, for this opportunity. Mine is to just emphasize, like the speakers before me, on reporting. It is important, no matter how mild it is, because this is a new vaccine, so we would like to pick out everything that will be of concern. And just to further reassure, as Dr. Marybeth mentioned, we have the National Vaccine Safety Advisory Committee, which is a group of experts that is helping us to do the causality assessment. And we are privileged to have Professor Nzala and Dr. Marybeth on that committee, among other experts. So I'd like to continue to reassure you that issues of safety will continue to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. The audience hasn't asked this, but maybe my question as we move to a close is perhaps we need access to a link where people can post their concerns or any issues so that they're continuously addressed. I think that 30% uptake, I hope after this webinar that it will markedly go up. I want to put my hand up. I have been vaccinated and I'm singing the song to everybody. Somebody said that we prayed last year for a vaccine. Now we have it. We should use it. So on that note, I'd like to thank our panel of esteemed panel of experts, and thank you for the effort, the time, the work you do towards our COVID response. Wish you well and great blessings. And I'll hand over to Dr. John Kenuthia's KNH team so that they can say goodnight and keep passing the message about safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate the time that our panelists have had with us, and we've really had robust discussions on matters vaccine. I hope that our concerns have been arranged with these discussions, and we know now where to get the right information through such forums and even from the website. So we really want to thank you. And due to because of time, we will not go much into majority of the questions which have been answered actually. But maybe just as a very last one, just allow me, Dr. Marybeth, just answer this one because it has come up many times about just breastfeeding and pregnancy. The safety of the vaccine in regards to breastfeeding and pregnancy. Just that last one as we close.
If you're going to answer that, sorry, Dr. Maritim, before you answer, there's also a question about, can you get vaccinated if you've had COVID before? Just add it to that.
Yeah, so when you look at the clinical trials, none of the COVID vaccine clinical trials recruited pregnant women. So they in the clinical trials, it was very specific in terms of who was recruited, and none of the clinical trials included pregnant women. Currently, the Pfizer in the US is recruiting pregnant women, is conducting a clinical trial where they're enrolling pregnant women and giving them the Pfizer mRNA vaccine. So when we look at pregnancy, that's a very frequently asked question, even when we had the webinar last week on Friday at this same webinar during our COVID, the Friday webinars that we normally have, it was asked severally. So basically, when you look at the manufacturer's insert and the other literature, even for most of the vaccine, it basically refers you to discuss with your physician. So when you come to me as your physician and you're asking me whether to recommend the vaccine in pregnancy, I don't have any clinical data evidence in terms of the safety aspects. But the caveat to that is you have to balance risk versus the benefit. And what we currently know for the vaccines that we are deploying, the Covishield specifically, it is not a live attenuated virus vaccine, which is normally contraindicated in pregnancy. And therefore, it theoretically may be safe in pregnancy. And therefore, specifically, when you're looking at our Kenyan situation, if you're a healthcare worker, you're pregnant, we are in a third wave, and we know COVID disease is severe in pregnancy. Pregnancy is one of the risk factors for a severe outcome in COVID-19. The risk, therefore, would outweigh, the benefit would outweigh the risk. Having said that, because we know that organogenesis occurs in the first trimester, it may be unsafe to recommend it in the first trimester. And my advice would be, if you're outside of the first trimester, maybe in the second trimester, third trimester, you may take the vaccine because of the risk of what we currently know in terms of the outbreak, that we don't have anything to prevent an adverse outcome. So I don't have hard and fast rules, but if I was pregnant now, I'd take the vaccine outside of the first trimester, or if somebody consulted me, I'd recommend. The same thing again for lactating mothers. We know that when you take the vaccine, what is generated is antibodies, and we know that antibodies can cross the placenta and go to the baby. We don't have any evidence in terms of the children, and I know Moderna is rolling out a vaccine for the pediatric population, so starting with dosing and then again safety and efficacy. But the theoretical risk of harm to the baby during breastfeeding seems at this point to be low, because it's antibodies that are generated in response to the vaccine. So I hope that answers that question. In terms of taking the vaccine, if you've had COVID-19, it's recommended to take the vaccine even if you've had COVID-19, because what we currently know is that you develop some immune response following natural infection, but we don't know the durability of that natural response. And therefore, you may at some point find that you don't have any antibodies to protect you because those antibodies may have declined significantly. The caveat is that when you've suffered COVID-19, it's recommended to delay the vaccine by about 4 weeks, either 4 weeks from a positive test or 4 weeks from resolution of symptoms. So not to give it too acutely, not to give it when you have fever, because again, that fever could be part of COVID-19 as a syndrome. So to delay the vaccine by 4 weeks after suffering COVID-19. So what is important to note is that when you get the vaccine after COVID, you may anticipate a more robust immune response, because what happens is that when you get a viral infection, you have some immune memory that's mediated either by the humoral immunity, as well as even the cell-mediated immunity. You have what is called the adaptive immunity. So when you give the antigen, this in the form of the vaccine, what you're actually doing is you're boosting that initial response, and therefore the immune response that occurs to that may be faster, so very soon after, and even higher. So you may anticipate that your adverse events may be exaggerated. So your fever may come earlier, your pain may be more, you may have more myalgia compared to a lot of us who maybe got our first shot and have not had very robust side effects. So you may anticipate that. What we currently don't know is, and I think the data is still out there, is if you've had COVID, do you need the 2 doses, or would 1 dose be adequate to provide a good immune response to offer fairly long-lasting immunity? Another thing we don't know about these COVID vaccines is the durability. So we don't know whether we'll need a booster after 1 year. The jury is still out there. So I think I've tried to answer the 2 questions regarding the pregnancy, as well as even when to delay or when to give the COVID after natural infection.
Thank you so much for those responses. We have now come to the end of our webinar today, and thank you for taking part. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank you, Dr. Nelly Mugo, for really taking us through this session in a very great way. We thank Dr. Willis Akwale, who is the chair of COVID-19 vaccine task force, who was with us and took us through what is happening. Dr. Richard Dyer, Prof. Omo Anzala, Dr. Mary Beth Maritim, and even Prof. Walter Joko with us. Yeah, we thank you all for taking part in this, and thank you our participants for engaging us. Do have a lovely evening. Good night. Thank you.
Good night, too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.